AFR Talk.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, 888-589-8840. Going to get to as many of your phone calls as we can here in just a moment. Back to the John Fund piece, National Review Online. I've got a paragraph here talking about what we know for a fact the Mississippi Conservatives PAC did. A mysterious robocall. This is John Fund now, very sober analyst for National Review Online. I read most of what this guy writes. Very sober, highly respected, good writer, good analyst, not given to hyperbole. He's not going to do stuff he can't substantiate and defend. A mysterious robocall went out to thousands of Democratic households just before the June 23rd vote. And Fund is saying, look, this did come from the Mississippi Conservatives PAC. Here is the content of the phone call. The female narrator's message was as follows: by not voting, you are saying, take away all of my government programs, such as food stamps, early breakfast and lunch programs, millions of dollars to our black universities, everything we and our families depend on that comes from Washington will be cut. It turns out, the Washington Examiner reported that former Republican Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour's pro-Cochran super PAC, Mississippi Conservatives, shelled out $44,000 for this offensive robocall. So there is a PAC run by the Barbour clan. It's a race-baiting, race-mongering robocall attacking a fellow conservative. You know, when you think about Reagan's 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak evil of a fellow Republican. Well, you know, the supporters of Senator Cochran, they not only spoke evil of Chris McDaniel, they tried to turn him into a racist, slave-owning leader of the KKK. That's how bad things got. Now, one legal analyst says, look, he does believe that Senator Cochran may have a legal path to victory by challenging these fraudulent ballots. And for those that may be aware, probably people outside Mississippi wouldn't be aware of this, but there was a controversy in the election for the mayor of Hattiesburg last year, and that election had to be done over. They had to do a do-over because there was a 37-vote differential, and they discovered that 36 absentee ballots had been delivered to the incumbent's wife. The mayor was a Democrat. His wife got a hold of 36 absentee ballots. She took them to the jail and had the inmates in the jail fill them out. And one of the voters included a felon for whom it was illegal for him to vote. So that whole election had to be redone, had to do it over. And that is, I think, a legitimate possibility in this case if the McDaniel forces are not barred from being able to examine the poll books honestly and transparently. So anyway, John Fund saying, look, this action on the part of the establishment Republicans, this is going to poison the political atmosphere in Mississippi for years to come, you know, maybe really in the entire country. The establishment Republicans spent $23 million trashing Tea Party candidates in this primary election. It's, it's really not good. You know, this is these are from the people that say we got to have a big tent. You know, we can't divide over ideology. We've got to all pull together. We got to, the question is, you got a tent that's big enough for the Tea Party. Doesn't look that way to me. You got a tent that's big enough for Chris McDaniel? Doesn't look that way to me. You got a tent that's big enough for Tea Parties in America? Doesn't look that way to me. And I think I'm not the only one that's kind of wondering whether the GOP tent is big enough for genuine Reaganite conservatives. Let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's go to David, Albany, Georgia. David in Albany, Georgia. Welcome, David. What's on your mind?
First off, thank you for your show and thank you for your ministry. I do appreciate what you do. It's a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
My comment is about the Chris McDaniel, Thad Cochran race.
Uh-huh.
And I heard a couple of days ago that they were actually paying ministers to turn out their Democratic congregations to vote for Thad Cochran to keep McDaniel, of course, from winning.
That is correct.
And that is despicable to me. But what I haven't heard anybody say yet is that it's despicable that the pastors essentially got their congregations to go to the polls and lie.
Because you're saying they fully intend to vote for Childers in November.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah, and that's exactly right, and that's part of the deal, because electoral law, in Mississippi, and David's exactly right. In Mississippi, it is against the law to vote in the Republican primary if you intend to vote for the Democrat in November. That's against the law. Now, it takes a mind reader. Obviously, it's not an enforceable law, but nevertheless, that's the law, and it's specifically, that law was written specifically for situations like this to check this tendency to try to monkey with the other party's primary. That's the reason that law was put on the books. And so you've got these pastors in, and this is your point, David. You've got pastors out there that are urging members of their own congregations to lie, to break the law, to commit electoral fraud. So you're right. That's just wrong on any number of levels. And speaking of this whole church involvement, here's another story. This is from the New York Times. Full-page advertisement in Mississippi Link, a weekly newspaper aimed at black residents of Jackson, the state's capital, Mississippi, urged readers to vote for Senator Thad Cochran in the June 3 primary. That might be unremarkable except for one thing. The Political Action Committee that paid for the ad shares an address and leadership with a local church. All Citizens for Mississippi. Its registration as a super PAC with the FEC, Federal Election Commission, was posted online last week and contains one important clue about its origins. It shares an address with New Horizon Church International in Jackson and also names Jacqueline Vann, the church's chief financial officer, as its treasurer. Now, of course, if this was a Republican church doing this, a conservative church doing this, these were conservatives, and this Political Action Committee shared an address with a Southern Baptist church, a conservative Southern Baptist church, somebody would be hauled off to jail by now. Lois Lerner or her successors would be all over this thing. So here's a church could lose its tax-exempt status if it participates in a political campaign like that is going to happen. If it was a conservative church, if they were doing this on behalf of the Democratic interest and instead of Republican interest, there would be an unending scandal over that. All right, David, that's a very, very good call. That's an angle I hadn't thought about. These pastors got this walking around money from a guy named Scooby-Doo Warren. He got all this money. Again, we don't know exactly where that money came from, but probably from the same sources that are funding these robocalls and these flyers and so forth, walking around money to hand out to pastors to turn out their parishioners to vote in accordance with Democratic wishes. All right, let's go to Chase, Laurel, Mississippi. Chase, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. And by the way, I got to tell you, I got absolutely no problem. I want to be clear. I have no problem with pastors doing this. I do not have a problem in the world with pastors doing this. If they want to do it, they should be allowed to. There's nothing in the Constitution that would prohibit pastors from doing this. I have no problem with this. The problem is you got this double standard where if a conservative pastor does it, they land on him like a falling safe. This happens routinely in Democratic-leaning churches, and nobody says a word about it. Let's go to Chase, Laurel, Mississippi. Chase, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Chris McDaniel is a hometown boy. Jones County has pulled out all kinds of support for Chris McDaniel. We're proud of the work he's been doing. But, there's so much corruption all over the state. You were talking about several counties that have basically, stiff-armed the audit into the poll books.
Mm-hmm.
I know one such county has been Jefferson Davis County. My wife actually got a call to go and help out with the investigation with the audit into the poll books, and she made a call, and they were told, don't come. They're not letting us look at them. They're not letting us get into the books, and something about certifying the election before they can do that, which is just patently illegal.
Well, and what they're doing, there's another angle here, and I think I've read stories about this, and I think that's what's going on, Chase. What the Cochran campaign is doing is they're trying to get these county clerks to wait as long as they possibly can to certify the election so that the McDaniel camp doesn't have time to examine these poll books. So they may legitimately say we have to certify the election before we let the public look at these poll books. I understand it. I don't have a problem with that. But they are deliberately putting that off. They are delaying. They are obstructing. They're trying to run out the clock. So by the time they get around to certifying the election, there won't be time for volunteers like your wife to go check these poll books. And that, too, is monkeying with the system.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I don't know. It really hurts me, but I guess the silver lining in this, I know for my wife, she is, and she wouldn't mind me saying this, is someone who used to be, a low information voter. And now she has, because of this election, she has gotten involved and has started listening to, conservative talk radio, started listening to guys like Levin and Hannity, and I think she's listening to your show right now, so it's, she's voted and she's reading and just informing herself. And so if nothing else good comes from this, there's been a sleeping giant in Mississippi awakened that, the conservative faction is not going to let this go down easily.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember Mississippi.
All right. Well, thank you, Chase. I appreciate the call. And I think like John Fund said, I don't know that the establishment Republicans really know what they've done here. This is a suicide mission, what they have done here, because they have communicated to us grassroots conservatives that we have nothing but contempt for you. We have nothing but ridicule for you. We are determined to obliterate you. We will spend $23 million to kneecap you. We will demonize you. We will vilify you. We will call you names. We will falsely accuse you of racism because we are determined to wipe you off the face of the map. That's the message, ladies and gentlemen, that's been sent by the GOP establishment to grassroots Tea Partiers in this election in Mississippi. And that's not just going to be a Mississippi issue. That's going to resonate over the entire nation. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back after the news. Stay with us. Focal Point AFR Talk.
American Family Radio.
AFR Talk.
We live in a time when godly Christian values are in danger of vanishing.
I hope every American will turn out and vote, every member of his family.
We cannot neglect such a great opportunity. The American Family Association urges you to register to vote. Be a part of the historic process that has helped to make our nation the greatest in history.
The dreams of the next decade lie in your hands.
Faith, family, freedom.
American Family Radio, AFR Talk.
A ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Police in Mississippi say a Tea Party official arrested after photos were taken of U.S. Senator Thad Cochran's ill wife has been found dead. They are treating